from Abuja.
It's all about the human struggle to raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. I'm Magnus Packle, and this is Magnus Packle GVA. I appreciate you being a part of our show. Knowledge and skills are the key drivers of the knowledge economy. Knowledge and skills oil the wheels of industry and commerce. Every day, new ways of doing things, new technologies, and new products find their way onto the global market. At the core of this is the dynamic interaction between technical knowledge, skills, and the market economy. A critical mass of knowledge and skills is therefore necessary for the effective participation of any country in the global knowledge economy and marketplace. The increasing recognition that higher technical and vocational skills are crucial in enhancing competitiveness and contributing to social inclusion, decent employment, and poverty reduction has been a strong incentive for reform. A skilled and knowledgeable workforce improves the investment climate because skilled workers create an attractive economic environment for investors. The returns to increasing investments in skills development tend to be high in rapidly growing economies and can be low or non-existent in situations characterized by weak growth and poor governance. Among the most critical supporting factors of better skills utilization will be the macroeconomic reforms necessary to promote growth, as this will help expand opportunities for business development. Therefore, any employment strategies to promote national growth should emphasize skills development for the sectors with the most promising employment prospects if they are to have a maximum impact. In view today, Africa and the new giant. But up next, why wait? Ever notice that so-called big men and madams tend to be much bigger and fatter than the average person? Certainly, they are much bigger than poorer people in society. Indeed, it used to be that when you get this big, people would describe it as evidence of good living. Well, certainly, we all know that that is not so. These people are really not in good shape. Of course, we also know that very poor people in Africa are usually not fat. This is not because they are exercising. They typically look emaciated because of their poor nutrition and their poverty. If you find your income getting larger and your fat cells also getting bigger, so much you are fat and out of shape, why wait? That's my question. Do something right away. First, cut back on your food intake. And since you may already be helping poorer folks in the community, you may even do well to also give away some of your excess food that may be contributing to the weight in the first place. The extra weight can compromise your health and undermine your benefit to yourself and to society. Excess weight on the people can be too much weight on the economy. It often leads to poor health, missed work time, and low productivity. It is bad economics for society. So if things are turning out better for you, and you are starting to see the evidence of good living, don't let it show in your stomach and in the size of your clothes. Often I see people just going about their business with all their fat. Why wait? Do something about it. Because if you make things hard on your body can make things hard on you. Our hidden economics for you. China's increased involvement in Africa has sparked concerns Because on one hand, China's rising demand for Africa's natural resources has helped to re-establish the continent as a source of valuable commodities for the global market, and also to focus attention on the possibilities for Africa to break out of poverty. On the other hand, increased African-Chinese relations has not improved governance issues, which still persist on the continent, as it is inferred that China would rather skirt political interference for a large market for abundant raw materials. China may also be looking for a place to dump its cheap manufacturers that support jobs at home. To help us look at this is Dr. Okujo Nnanna. Dr. Nnanna is an economist and a central banker. He attended William Patterson University in Wayne, New Jersey, LaSalle University Extension Program, and the University of Houston in Houston, Texas, in the United States, where he read finance, law, economics, and political economy, and obtained his PhD. Dr. Nnanna worked at the International Monetary Fund and was the Director of Research and Statistics at the Central Bank of Nigeria. He was also the Director General of the West African Monetary Institute. He is a consultant with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Please join us in our discussion with Dr. Joe Nnanna. As I just said in the lead-in, China is extremely important today. The second largest economy in the world after the United States. And there are people that say that by 2016, I've estimated it to be about 2020, that China is going to take over from the United States as the top country in the world in terms of size. Africa is small, accounting for only about 3% of world trade. But Africa is now looking to China, this emerging giant. And the question is, can Africa handle this giant? Is Africa ready for China?
China became significant after it was admitted into the WTO, the World Trade Organization, in 2001. By virtue of its size, China has become very, very prominent with trade in Africa. But let me say that trade is mutually beneficial. Trade is better than no trade. And each country will get out from that relationship what it puts on the table. The fear of China or the emerging partners displacing the traditional partners is neither here nor there. If you look at the figures, Africa still maintains a significant trade relationship with its traditional partners. These are the UKs of this world, France, and the USA. But the emerging partners have shown significant incursion into the trade relationship in Africa. Well, the question is, are the African countries getting the best out of its new partners, or are African countries better off staying with its traditional partners? My take to this question is that it is a positive sum game for African countries trading with the emerging partners. Well, we can do more, provided we negotiate with the emerging partners, and that negotiation will be based on the framework of what we want, what the African countries want. In trade, countries don't get what they deserve, they get what they negotiate for.
What we want, is it to try to continue our traditional kinds of our trade with our traditional partners? Or what we want, is it to shift to somebody else? Wouldn't that be based on our shifting to someone else? Wouldn't that be based on the fact that there is something that someone else has that the older traditional partners don't have?
Yes.
And that's why we're going there. Do we know that that's the case, that there is something new that we can get from these new partners vis-a-vis the old traditional partners?
It's a very good question you've posed. In fact, do we have a husband's choice is the question. Are we getting a better deal from the emerging partners, or are we better off staying with our traditional partners? It's neither yes or no. We can, in fact, gain more. As I said earlier, trade represents a positive sum game. Hitherto, trading with our traditional partners, Africa was basically the source of raw materials.
But isn't that what's happening with the likes of China?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. The emerging partners have brought a new dimension into the trade relationship. What we have now is, what we see actually is more of trade diversion than trade creation.
But is that a good thing? Isn't that
No.
when they teach us that
diversion,
you don't want that?
Diversion implies there's a distortion
Okay.
in the free trade, which we can clearly see in terms of quality of products we get in the African countries, be it textile, medicine, electronics. The quality of the product, is it affordable? And what is how can we maximize the benefit to the consumer? Is the welfare being diminished? Or do we have an implicit price increase in the type of product we receive from the emerging partners? Again, my take is that with more trade with the emerging partners, the quality of products coming into Africa, and in my country, Nigeria in particular, has changed dramatically.
It's gotten worse, or
It's getting worse. There's no question about it.
Okay.
And it's left to our regulatory authorities, the NAFDACs of this world, the sons of this world, to ensure that what we import into the country is what we bargain for.
But the argument is that the West, the traditional partners,
Yes.
have certain conditionalities that they almost always place on their trading partners in this part of the world.
That is true.
And they say, we will not play ball with you if you're not playing fair with your own people. And the sense is that the Chinese don't ask these kinds of questions, that they will play ball with anyone.
Well,
and even if you have bad leadership,
I agree.
they will go ahead
The
and play.
issue is democracy.
So the question is, are they really friends? Are they real? Do they offer us promise as far as being real good friends?
It's a very good question you ask. Democracy should be separate from trade. Politics, they try to separate from trade. But we are asking too much from emerging partners, particularly China, when we say that they should use the instrument of trade to change our governance structure. They cannot do that because they cannot give what they don't have. You can only give what you have.
Yeah, they don't have democracy.
They don't have
So they're not
democracy
gonna give us
as
democracy.
divine in the West.
Yeah,
So they cannot give you democracy.
but they have democracy as defined where?
They have the democracy as defined by the people of China. And they will encourage you to define your own local democracy. And if it suits your purpose and it delivers the public goods and enables you to meet the MDG, fine with them. But don't lose the sight that when we were trading more with the traditional partners, the issue of corruption was still on the table in Nigeria. And I don't know whether that problem has in fact declined significantly.
If we're trading with China,
Yes.
what do we sell to them outside of natural resources, oil, gas, and all that? Can we sell our shoes in China?
No.
Can we sell
No.
apparel?
That is the problem we have.
Sell cell phones,
No,
and
you
so what
can't.
would we be selling?
That is the
to
problem
the
we
Chinese?
have.
Yeah.
Trading with the emerging partners has actually reduced all of the African country into one huge market for China. And in return, what we do is to send our raw materials. In China, China has invested close to $700 million in Lekki, in Lagos, and also in Osun State. Okay? And what are they producing? They are producing the same things that our local factories were producing. There's no gainsaying that the emergence of China as our major trading partner has in fact killed our textile industry, our shoe industry, our battery industry. There's no question about it. Everybody knows that. Okay? So the question of what do we sell in return apart from raw material is the critical question we have to ask.
Yeah.
But do we expect China to relocate their factory in Nigeria to serve 160 million people when they have 1.4 billion people or so?
Yes, what I was thinking is, can we say to the Chinese or to the Brazilians or the Indians, to the extent that they are also coming there, if you will take natural resources from here, for every amount you take out, you must process an equivalent amount in Africa. You know, so that we can create jobs. We also learn the technologies and understand how to do it. But that doesn't seem to be happening. And when they give assistance, shouldn't we demand that these are the areas where we need assistance? And so the assistance is targeted. So we know it is for HIV and AIDS, it is for diarrhea, it is for malaria, it is for whatever, for education, for building primary schools. So everybody knows that that aid that we got was for this. So that's the fear that I think some people are
I agree with you. In terms of making us do some primary processing of our raw material was at the heart of AGOA with our traditional partner, the USA.
Yes.
Okay? So it is a very good idea. But again, the Chinese will not give it to you without you asking for it. So the fault is not the Chinese, but the fault is the African countries. We have to make better use of our regional economic communities. The ECOWAS should say, okay, within the ECOWAS sub-region, if the Chinese are coming to do business with us, this is our term.
And I want to conclude here, I have you to give a summary here for us, because what I'm thinking is that we really should not push anyone away. Africa should not push anyone away that wants to do business, whether it be the Chinese or the Brazilians or the Indians or the traditional partners. But as you said very eloquently, we should negotiate better.
Yes.
But that means we should understand what it is that we want.
Exactly.
And I think primary amongst all of that would be how to create jobs for our people.
Precisely.
And raise the level of living for our people.
Precisely.
Are there institutions, maybe universities or government setups across Africa? You've had the privilege of bringing countries together, working with them. Are there institutions that are looking at how we can really come up with these sets of things that you talked about earlier, to say, how do we negotiate better options for ourselves, whether it be trading with the traditional partners or with the emerging partners, so that we can create jobs and raise the level of living for our people?
I think within the West African sub-region, the ECOWAS has a very important department in charge of trade. And that department is doing a very good work in terms of having a common front for the ECOWAS country in negotiating with the traditional partners. But its ability to have a common front to discuss and negotiate with the emerging partner, I don't see them making much progress, because the emerging partners prefer dealing bilaterally. And our countries are so much in a haste to beat each other, to curry favor, to be the good guy. But as I said earlier, we are too small to withstand the might of China or India. But together, we will be able to get a better terms of trade, better negotiation, which will actually create jobs for our people. United, I believe we will do better. But divided, we will continue to remain a market for their finished products. Unfortunately, some of those finished products are not even worth buying with the money. As you can see, in terms of fake drugs, fake electronics, and things we consume and pay for it, which ought not to be if our regulatory agencies were doing what they're supposed to do in terms of negotiation.
Earlier in the year, the African Union unveiled its great gift from China, the African Union Conference Center and Office Towers, worth about $200 million. China says the building is a symbol of its deepening relations with Africa. Has China used this gift to capture Africa? China has now surpassed the United States as Africa's biggest trading partner. bilateral trade has grown from a mere $10.6 billion in 2000 to a whopping $160 billion in 2011, according to Chinese state media. The Chinese also say that their investments in Africa now total $50 billion, and that they have added to that tens of millions of dollars in food aid. This aggregation of African-Chinese trade shows that Africa's trade with China is highly concentrated with only a few countries. The top 5 trading partners are Angola, South Africa, Sudan, Nigeria, and Egypt. Africa's exports to China, with the exception of South Africa, are not very diversified, with heavy dependence on commodity exports of mostly crude oil and unprocessed agricultural products. On the other hand, African imports from China are more diversified and are dominantly machinery and transport equipment, manufactured goods, and handicrafts. China's foreign direct investment in Africa is dominated by a few resource-rich countries. Between the year 2003 and 2007, more than half of Chinese foreign direct investment into Africa was absorbed by just 3 countries, with Nigeria accounting for 20.2%, 19.8% in South Africa, and 12.3% in Sudan. Africa's apparel and textiles industries find it hard to compete with China. If you can sell textiles and apparel to China, is it electronics that you will sell to them? So it comes to the big question. What will you sell to China? Just oil and other natural resources? What about when these are depleted? What will Africa do? Certainly, we need trade with China and the West. But the trade and relationships must be beneficial to Africa, not just short term, but also long term. Here is the thing to do. The African Union must demand that the Chinese, and for that matter anyone looking to buy any natural resources from Africa, refine 50% of it on the continent. This would be a jointly determined condition for importing natural resources from Africa. There are not many alternative places for them to go get these precious products. They will have to sit down with us. I'm Magnus Packel, and that's my view.